Hi everybody, this is Oksana, and before we get started here, I just want to say a huge thank you to Rio Grande for sponsoring this video. They have all the wire and tools as well that you need for wire wrapping, and I'm going to be using their wonderful copper wire today to make this pendant. This is a fun pendant because it kind of looks like cable knit, this texture and pattern, so it looks like this stone is wearing a knit hat or maybe scarf. So if you want to see how to make this fun little pendant, just keep watching. For our wire, we are going to need both square and round copper 20 gauge dead soft wire. So this is my round wire, this is my square. And lastly, we're going to be using some half round wire. This is 24 gauge half round wire just to connect everything together and for our bail and everything. This is also dead soft from riogrande.com. And of the square, you are going to need 2 pieces, and they measure about 8 inches. And then of the round wire, you are going to need 1 piece, and it needs to be quite long. It's about 17 inches. Don't mind my measuring tape that my dogs ate a little bit. And then you are going to need a stone. An oval stone will work well for this. If you have a teardrop, you can position it like this downwards. This is kind of like in between an oval and a teardrop. It's like a very rounded teardrop. And I forget what the stone is called, but it's one of those like fossilized ones. And it measures almost exactly an inch, just a smidge more than an inch. So just anywhere in that vicinity will be fine, doesn't have to be exactly the same size. And then for the tools, you're going to need some pliers. These are my Lindstrom pliers. They are the RX 7890. And then you are going to need cutters to cut your wire. These are the Swanstrom Tools cutters. So we're going to take our 2 square wires and 1 round wire, and we are going to line them up so that it's like a little sandwich. You have the round wire in between the square wires like this. Now, because it is longer, it's not going to match up, like the ends of it are not going to match up. So if I hold it like this, I basically just want to find the middle of the round wire and then the middle of the square wires and just kind of line them all up. If you're having a hard time with that, just measure and mark where the middle is. But eyeballing it, it seems to be right here. So I'm just going to hold it like that, and then I'm going to grab my half round wire and I'm going to use it to connect all 3 of these wires together. So let me zoom in a little bit. I am using the half round wire, the flat side down and the rounded side up. And I'm just wrapping it around. You can see it looks a little bit different than normal when you normally use all square wires, but you can tell that the middle wire is different looking because it's round. So I'm just taking this little wire end here and wrapping it around to get things started. And then once you've done that and you want to keep going, this is still connected to the spool, so you can't wrap it around and around. You just have to guide it with your hand and turn. And guide and turn. And this doesn't have to be very long. Just see what you think looks best to you. It's just about connecting the 3 wires together. So this is good. I'm going to grab my wire cutters now. And it doesn't matter which side, but just pick a side and make sure the little ends of your wire, after you trim them, both end up on the same side. And that is going to be kind of like the inside. It's going to be hidden. We are going to cover it up by having the stone there. All right, so now I'm going to look one more time to see if it's still centered. It's a little bit off to the right because before you press it down, it actually has the ability to kind of slide a little bit. So I'm just gonna, yeah, that looks like it's good. And in the middle, I'm gonna press down on it now. You can see how it looks flat compared to this portion that I haven't pressed yet. So this pushes down the little wire ends so they don't stick up, and it just kind of makes everything nice and flat like this. So this is going to be the part touching the stone with our little wire ends. And my stone, it is a teardrop, but it has a really rounded little end. Normally, if it has like a sharp point, I would use my pliers and I would bend a point for that. But with this particular stone, it needs to be kind of curved. So let's see if I made that curve good enough. Yeah, that looks good. Maybe even open it up a little bit more. It's a little bit wider than this. And if you have an oval, then you would also just do a little curve to sit here on the bottom of your oval. Or even just like a round stone would be fine as well. So I'm holding it, bending my wires around, put it down on a table or a flat surface. It's easier for me to show you here like this so you can see in front of the camera, but it's harder to actually bend because it's not laying flat. But yeah, if you just put it down on a flat surface, I usually put it on the edge of a table, and then I have these little ends just kind of hanging off the edge of the table. That way I have access to them and it's easy to kind of grab and shape them. But ultimately you want to squeeze them together like this so they come together kind of centered at the top center here of our stone. So make sure they don't crisscross, keep them lined up how they are with the rounded wire in the middle there. It can be tricky. If they keep crisscrossing on you and you're having a really hard time keeping them lined up nicely, what you can do is take a little scrap piece of the half round wire and just wrap it around like exactly how we did here, but maybe not this many times, just like 3 times, press it down, do that here, and that way they're going to be held and they're not going to crisscross here at the top where you're trying to bring them together. And then you can remove those little half round wires. So it's like a way to temporarily hold them as you're bending them. I might actually do a video on that now that I think about it, because I think it's a pretty good tip. It can be really helpful. So I'm trying to just squish these wires together. Sometimes it helps to just kind of bend it side to side like this. That really brings them together. Trying to have it be nice and centered. Also, try to have this little gap above the stone be quite small. It's better if it's on the smaller side, like roughly like mine. So I just used my pliers a little bit as well. There, that looks good to me. So now that we've done that, they're all still lined up nicely. 3 wires on one side, 3 wires on the other. We're gonna take our half round wire again, gonna wrap it around all of them, starting with the little end here of the wire. I'm gonna press on that, and I'm gonna take this little wire end here and put it through like this. I'm gonna pull on that, and let's give it a little trim, and there we go. So that's how we get it started. And now we are going to work on our bail. So I'm going to take the front 2 wires, push them forward a little bit like this, and you can push the other ones back if you need more space here. Make sure they're lined up because they're square, so make sure the flat sides kind of stack together and line up like this. If one of the wires is turned a little bit and you have the corner instead of the flat side, you can just take your pliers and kind of turn it back. But once they're nice like this, you can just go ahead and wrap the half round wire around since it's connected to the spool, because we're working with the other side of it now. It's important to turn the piece as you guide the wire, not just wrap it around like we did with the wire end, because that'll make the wire get twisted. So I'm just guiding the half round wire with my right hand, and I'm turning the piece with my left hand, and I'm just going to keep going off camera for a little bit because it's just going to be very repetitive until it's about 3/4 of an inch. That's roughly the size that I like my bales to be. Feel free to make your bales smaller or bigger if you prefer. All right, so once it's long enough, we're just going to trim it so that the wire end of it is here. So if you're looking at it from the front, this is the front. You don't want the wire end to be on the front. And then if you turn it this way, this is sort of the back, and that's where that little wire end should be. Just going to press down on the wire end and just on the whole thing. Make it nice and flat like this. So what we're going to do now is separate these top wires, and this is how we're going to do it. We're going to take these two long round ones and we're going to bend them to the right, or you could do to the left and do kind of the opposite direction. And then the back ones, we are just going to bend them to the back, and we're actually going to trim them. So what I'm going to do, actually before we trim them, because one thing I notice is if I do this step first and I bend and trim these wires, and later when I bend the back wires to trap in my stone, these, even though they're like short up here, they kind of move and they might not look as nice and as perfect as when you first did it. So what you want to do is take your back wires. So this is how we're going to lock in our stone later. I'm not locking it in right now, but I just want to show you the purpose of this. So later when we're locking in our stone, you want to trap the stone basically from the front and the back. So I'm not going to trap it from the front yet, but from the back, we would bend each wire here like this. I'll just put a little bend in it, bend it onto the back of the stone, and that traps the stone in like that. So I'll put the stone in later. As you can see, these kind of already moved and look different than they did before. So now I'm going to bend and trim them now that I've bent these wires, because this is all the same wire that goes up here. That's why bending this impacts these. So I'm gonna try and have them nice and together. I'm gonna leave a little bit of space here, and I'm gonna grab them like this with my pliers. Then I'm going to put a bend this way, and I'm gonna work my way down like this. And what that does is makes them nice and flat. If you were just to bend them down instead of doing this, it would kind of curve them down and you'd have a gap between the wires and the wrap there. So now I'm going to trim them like this. So they're nice and short, nice and flat, not much of a gap there at all. And then you can just go in there with your pliers and just kind of press them down some more and perfect them some more. There we go. Now they're just kind of nice and neat, just like this. All right, so now I'm gonna do my bail. So just have that nice and lined up. I like to use my finger to just give it a curve, feel free to use some kind of tool or something to curve it around for your bail if that's easier for you. But this is the kind of rounded shape you want for your bail. So I'm gonna press this way, hold it together, push these wires up like that. I'm gonna use one of these wires, the left one, the one that's the opposite of these. And I'm gonna go ahead and bend it this way. So the wire is essentially wrapping around this little edge here by doing that, and I'm gonna trim it and leave myself a little end like this so it's long enough to tuck it away, but not so long that when I tuck it away it's gonna stick through to the other side. So take that wire end, kind of turn it inwards like this, and I'm just gonna press on that. So tucking it away in here, nice and short, you don't see it coming out the front. This wire, I'm just gonna trim it short. You don't have to wrap it around the edge. It's already enough that you did just the one. But you can if you want to. It just kind of gets in the way, so I like to just trim it off like this. So my bail is a little bit crooked. There we go. All right, so this is what you should have. So now I can grab my stone again, pop it in there. It's already trapped from the back. We did that earlier, so I'm just gonna use my pliers, slide kind of down here. Oh, actually, let me show you a little tip, little trick that I'm actually gonna need to use here. So I didn't notice this earlier, but if you take a look, if this is like the center, I try to find the complete center of this. There's a few more wraps on this left side of the center than on the right side. So in other words, this little wrap here is a little bit pushed over to the left here. It's not perfectly in the middle. And that just happened when I was bending it. If I noticed it earlier, I could have, you know, been more careful, fixed it, but now it's like almost done. So what you can do if that happens is just unwrap a few times. See, that looks much better and much more in the center. Unwrap a few times, trim it. Remember having the wire end here on the inside. So trim that and press down on that wire end. And now we're going to pop the stone in. So that's much better looking now here on the bottom. So now we're gonna trap the stone in from the front. So I'm gonna take my pliers and just work my way down here until I reach that little wrap. And then I'm just gonna turn my pliers, leaving this little bend here. Make sure this wire, this round wire, just can kind of slide around. Just line it up here on this edge. It'll kind of lock in place later once we do these ones. And same thing on this end. Work my way down till I get to the little wrap. Put a bend, try to make it the same kind of bend. If one of the bends ended up being, you know, more, you can kind of go back and do the other one, try to get it the same. All right, so now our stone is secured and locked in our cabochon. And now we're gonna do these wires here. So this part, it can be a little bit tricky if you haven't twisted two wires together before. So you might wanna practice first, maybe on some scrap wires, but basically we are going to take them and kind of line them up like this. So it's like a little triangle, little kind of sharp angle in there. And we are gonna take them and just carefully twist them like this together. Here in the very beginning, when we're starting to do this, it's a little hard to get in there with your fingers, right? So I will use my fingers later, but right now I'm gonna hold right here with my pliers, and I'm just gonna twist by turning the pendant a little bit. And you notice this twist is getting nice and tight, and that looks pretty like that. So just in the beginning is when I do that, because it's just hard to get in there with my fingers. And now you want to try to keep these, if you imagine an imaginary line kind of just running from your twist here in between the two wires, you want to keep these an equal distance apart from it. You don't want one of them to be, you know, like this, almost straight, and then the other one down, because that's how your twist is going to get all uneven. And one of the wires is going to start wrapping around the other wire rather than having a nice even twist. And also, don't be afraid to just go slow. I know it's kind of tempting to just go, twist, twist, twist. But don't be afraid to just take your time and do just one little twist at a time, nice and slowly, and keep checking on these wires. If one of them moved, you can kind of fix it up to keep the twist even, like this. And we are gonna have to do this for quite a while. It's hard to predict exactly how much of this twisted part you will need. So I cut myself some extra long wires here, as you can see, and I'm just gonna do an extra long twist. I'll measure it for you guys, but it'll also depend on the width of your stone as well. And so there isn't like an exact science. I just try to overestimate and do it a little longer, and then you can always just cut off the excess. So it's not a big deal. So I'm just gonna keep going just like this and keep doing this twist. All right, so I'm starting to run out of wire here. Have a nice long twist going on. I'll measure it for you guys. It is 5 inches. So now, this next step, it's optional. I think it gives a really cool look, and that is to hammer it. But you have to be very careful, because when you hammer wire, it hardens and it becomes more brittle. So once you hammer it and you try to bend it, it's going to be much more likely to snap and break. So we are going to bend this wire. That's why when I'm hammering it, I'm going to be really careful, and I'm going to hammer it just a little bit. What I want to do is just kind of flatten the look of this twist, because I think it looks really nice when it's flat. But I'm going to just very gently, almost just like tap it with my hammer until I see that it's looking flat and giving it a nice flat look. So I have an iron block here, so just put it down on the ground. I'm just holding it in the air for demonstrative purposes. And then you need a chasing hammer, and I'm just going to very gently kind of tap across this. All right, so just to show you the difference, I'm gonna go ahead and do that to the whole piece off camera. But just to show you, let's see, maybe if I zoom in here, it's starting to have a slightly flat kind of effect here versus here where I haven't hammered at all. So just a little bit, you don't wanna make it super flat and hammer it too much, but just that slightly flat look, I think looks really nice. All right, so I went ahead and did that just to this whole piece here. And now I'm going to go ahead and take this wire. You just have to be gentle and careful with it, because now that you've hammered it, it's a little tough. It's a little firm. You don't want to force it too much. You want to just gently and carefully bend it. So I'm kind of bending it up and curving it, trying to keep this flat edge of it facing me because I like the look of that flat edge. So just kind of curving it down. You can even take your pliers, and I'm just going to turn it a little bit because the flat edge is starting to go under, but I want it to be here, visible. And swoop it down. So this is the little swoop that I always do on all my pendants. And now I'm going to go ahead and bring it to the back and start wrapping it around. Like this. Trying to decide, maybe I should put it a little higher like that. Let's see. There we go. And just keep going. If the flat side starts to kind of turn, you can fix it with your pliers like I just did. And keep going. My goal is to cover up most, if not all, of this gap. So if you hammered it too much and it's really flat, then you're gonna notice when you bend it around the angles, it almost like has a sharp bend to it. Oh wow, this worked out to be like the perfect length. Who would have thought? So that's it. Now we're just gonna trim, leave a little end there so you have some wire ends to tuck away. And there's a little gap in there where our stone kind of ends. So I'm just gonna push it in there, push those wire ends in there, tuck them away. They end up going above the stone there. All right, now you can just kind of fix anything that might have got discombobulated there. Perfect. And that is it. And here's what it looks like after the copper has been oxidized. I do have a video on how to do that. I use liver of sulfur gel dissolved in water, and I think it just really brings out the texture there in this twisted portion. So it looks really nice with this particular design. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, leave me a like down below, and also don't forget to subscribe. I post new videos every single weekend. So I'll see you next time. Bye.